Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tone, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you trust me?
With my life, Dave. With my life.
You're the best.
I've trusted you with razors around my neck.
That's a good point. That is true.
There we go.
So the question becomes, do you trust institutions?
I do.
Do you trust governments?
But not blindly. Right? Governments, that's an interesting one, Dave. Probably less so. I think there's something in the belly of governments that probably lead us down certain roads at certain times that take my mind to some level of conspiracy theories. But in general, if you put government aside, there are public institutions that underpin democracy that I do trust.
Such as?
In Australia, the RBA.
Yep.
Australian Bureau of Stats.
Yep.
Right.
Universities? Do you trust universities?
That's interesting. I don't think trust is probably the wrong word. I trust what their objectives or what they're trying to achieve. I actually think it's the right thing. How they're going about it and how it's funded, I don't necessarily agree with, but it's not a trust issue. I just think they need to clean out. They need to get really sharp and focused around what it is they're here to do in terms of setting people up for providing meaningful contributions to our country in a raft of areas: arts, education, engineering, whatever it might be. How they're going there at the moment, especially with the mix of international students and some of the agendas that they run, I don't agree with at all.
I think Australia overall, I think for us, we have less of a trust deficit than what is going on in probably the UK, Western Europe.
I agree.
Definitely the US. But also one of the things I'd say that trust deficit, even speaking in our context in Australia, it's sort of self-inflicted, right? Because my position that for 3 or 4 decades, poor policy both sides of the aisle. We agree that there's housing affordability, energy issues, wars, even things like obesity. I think our NAPLAN tests, which is testing the kids at certain levels, there's been a decline. There's been some worrying stuff that's come out there. So in terms of educational quality, I think some of the key big moments of the last 20 or 30 years have not been handled well, and that's been what's created that cancerous erosion of the trust that means that even when something is factual, people now see things with such skepticism. So, for example, weapons of mass destruction.
WMDs.
Wasn't true.
I'm so lonely.
One of the best movies ever, Team America. Fuck you, Ham. Bricks. But so WMDs was a big thing.
Yep.
So we went a whole war based on shit that was just untrue. COVID origins.
Yep.
Has been a big thing. Trump-Russia collusion.
Yep.
Hunter Biden laptop.
Yep.
And what was the last? There was a fifth one that I think is a big one. Joe Biden's cognitive abilities. Right?
But there's ones in Australia as well.
There are, but what I'm trying to show is some really big moments that affect the world, right? Because US presidencies affect the world.
Yep.
US wars affect the world. COVID definitely affected the world. So part of the problem is when we look at those 5 things, either collectively or if you want to isolate each one, the people that we were meant to have faith in that wouldn't lead us down the garden path did.
Yep.
Now, what's that saying? You can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. And I think we've got to the point where looking at institutions and going to say universities, again, worse in the US, that the declining standards, we've got it here, but again, much worse because they've got, a lot of private institutions. It starts to make people say, well, if you can lie to me on such big things, how can I trust you on these others? So even with COVID, if you've ever heard of the Great Barrington Declaration, so people like Jay Bhattacharya, who's now in charge of the NIH in the US, he's one of the leading experts at Harvard that was advising against the way in which we dealt with it. But because there were questions he started to ask about its origins and the things I was seeing in markers, that it wasn't natural, it was man-made. You had, Anthony Fauci tried to, shut these people down, and then Google are suppressing things like the Great Barrington Declaration. And even if the Great Barrington Declaration, which was a paper signed by 1,500 of the world's leading epidemiologists and virologists that turned out to be right, but let's say they are wrong. The fact that dissent was being shut down was the problem, right? The fact that it turned out we destroyed a whole country and left it broken when there was no weapons of mass destruction. The fact that it turns around that, someone paid for a dossier that even the head of the CIA and the FBI and things were already questioning stuff, but then still ran with it. Like, these are key moments in history that if you want people to actually take you seriously when it matters and to have faith in your ability to lead the organization or the institution you do, and that you're doing things in the best interest of the population, these moments matter. You've got to get them right.
But a lot of those ones you described, David, they're politically motivated.
They are, because good point you brought up, right? Because locally, look at what happened with Scotty from marketing. So we had a prime minister that was giving himself all these portfolios to basically run like a mini dictatorship. So he was in control of everything that was happening during COVID, but didn't tell anyone.
I know. So that was a major failure, right? The fact that he was allowed to do it, where are the checks and balances?
100%.
Because you want the checks and balances in place. Even if you go back a little bit further, Dave, where we all remember the children overboard.
Yes.
The Tampa issue, where politically it was quite opportunistic of the Prime Minister of the time to kind of put that out there, wave a bit of red meat to the base, and then he got re-elected. And then even more subtle things where Prime Ministers in Australia politically have taken positions to undermine public institutions indirectly or even directly. I remember leading into one election where the election he ended up losing in 2007, where John Howard said categorically, and I quote, "interest rates will always be lower under a coalition," unquote, knowing full well that the setting of the benchmark rate is by the RBA, which is an independent body and is not politicised at all. But to make that comment is politically motivated. It's targeted at people who probably don't understand what the purpose of the RBA is, right, and what it's there to do. And what it does, it undermines trust in that institution. You shouldn't trust them, you trust me. I just think it's a slippery slope. The checks and balances are in place to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen. In the US, it's just magnified. I think one of the magnifications, if you like, in the US is around the appointments of judges and how political they are. And then that's
a big problem.
And the perception is, because I actually think most people on that bench, I'd be stunned if those people on that bench, when they're actually trying to apply their experience and their knowledge to the law, or the law to an issue, aren't doing that with the utmost of integrity. But the perception is that they lean a certain way, right? And I think that actually undermines. So when you can't trust people on the Supreme Court, right, and then you've got politicians in Congress or in Parliament locally making decisions that are clearly based on self-interest, you are going to get a bit deflated after a point in time and go, you know what, they're all full of shit.
Well, the Supreme Court's a good example because I think the way in which they're appointed would be one of the first things I think as a US citizen I would want changed, purely based on perception. Because your comment that you think that they interpret and apply the law apolitically is correct. And the reason why I can confidently say that, with the exception of one justice at the moment, if you look at the which one?
Thanks, Brett.
No, it's actually Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's the one that does not belong on the court because she's just simply not up to it. She legally is incompetent, and you know that because, again, let's run with this assumption that if it's a Republican appointee, they lean right, and if it's a Democrat appointee, they lean left. So, hypothetically speaking, for the next 2 minutes, let's assume that happens. Well, Ketanji Brown keeps getting done like 8-1, right? So, in other words, all the judges will interpret a particular decision, and it's a pattern. It's not one-off. It's not something anomalous that she dissents. And then when you read the dissent, it's like a a high school, but it's my feelings. There's no legal argument there. And she's the one appointment that was made on the basis that Biden said he was just going to put a black woman on there. Surely he could have found a better black female jurist. But anyway, if you look at their decisions, you can dispel the argument that they are partisan, because you'll see that there'll be, even in a 5-4 decision, there are plenty of decisions that aren't along party lines. And as I said, there's been decisions, especially lately, this is something that people, an uncomfortable truth as far as Trump. Trump keeps winning at SCOTUS. And now people would automatically, the reaction is, because it's a 6-3 conservative thing. It's go, well, okay, so why does it keep being things like 8-1? And there's even been 9-0. There's been times where even Ketanji Brown Jackson hasn't been able to make an argument. So if it's not applying the law equally, you wouldn't be getting these unanimous decisions, right?
And that's what gives me confidence.
Correct. Now, the issue for me still is that the way in which an appointment is made, it still allows that perception. Because even Clarence Thomas, who's been there 20, 30 years, gets spoken about like a conservative justice. So for me, I think the US needs to find a new way to appoint justices, so it's not seen as that's a Trump appointee, that was a Biden appointee, that was an Obama appointee or a Clinton appointee. Now, ironically, one of the things that hasn't helped the left, again, if you hold the view that they're appointed and they will lean right all the time, is the fact that if Trump hadn't have won this term, he hadn't won the last term, he probably wouldn't be getting another 2. It looks like he'll get another 2 appointments. So that'll be 5 Trump appointees, because he appointed Kavanaugh, he appointed Gorsuch, he appointed Amy Coney Barrett, and it looks like Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas will step down during his term, and that'll give him 5. That's an unbelievable amount of appointments for a president.
Yeah. But to your point, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Contrary to what people think, generally speaking, 8 of those 9 justices, even though someone like Kagan and Sotomayor, they know they lean left, but they're actually very good justices that, for the most part, just like the other justices, apply the law and interpret it. Is this constitutional? There's not really been any decisions or opinion you could read from those 8 justices that you would say this is just absolute dribble.
Yeah, I get it. So what about in the past, 6, 8 years, call it 8 years, this term that's bubbled up that undermines the media, and the media plays an important part in
Very
democracy,
much.
right?
Yeah, but they should.
All right.
Actually, they still are, just not as good as what they should be.
Yeah. So there's fake news, right? Fake news gets thrown out, and then the ability for social media to actually amplify that in terms of what you should believe or what you do believe and what you don't believe, what's real, what's fake. Even some of the stuff now that is coming out on X in terms of their AI and how they can create images and videos that just look for real. That just undermines confidence as well, right?
Yeah, it's very scary. Actually, just when you said fake news, there's, how Trump loves to give names to people and or situations. There's 2 times I think he's missed the boat. One was Jussie Smollett, if you know that one. Jussie Smollett was the gay black actor on a show called Empire.
Yep.
And there was this big hate crime, and these 2 guys alleged to put a noose around his neck and yell, "This is MAGA country," and blah, 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 right? And Kamala Harris would say, the U.S. is so racist. And it turns around, he hired his trainers from the gym who were brothers that were gay, and he keeps this noose on his neck for 2 hours, and he's got his Subway sandwich. And anyway, the point being, it turned out to all be fake. And of course, Jussie Smollett's sort of career's over. But I thought that Trump should have said, because he was saying it was fake news, be sure gone, it was fake news. I thought he missed a trick there. So that was number 1. And how he calls Liz Warren Pocahontas. And then, do you remember she did the whole DNA test?
Mm.
And she was all like, puts it out there, like, I'm 2%. And it turned out 2% is lower than the average American. actually is of Native American.
Yeah.
And he calls her Pocahontas. And I thought at that point, once it turned around that she was less Native American than the average American, he should have called her Pocahontas. So I think there's the two things that he sort of missed out there.
Yeah. But what about there's accusations around the independence of the bench we've spoken about? The health authorities copped the kicking during COVID. Now, rightly or wrongly, one thing I did like, and people are going to argue, but even ScoMo towed the line. Every day in those press conferences that we had every day with the state premiers and the chief medical officer of each state, they'd give their spiel first, right? The people would say people were leaning on them, but we had Labor parties and Liberal governments across the state. We had a Liberal federal government, but I actually took some faith in the fact that the health authorities were playing a prominent part and the politicians were following the advice. Right now, whether that's the right advice, whether you think it should have been handled differently, yada yada, but it gave me some confidence that in Australia, at least, we did that. And when you step into that COVID, do I think they could have handled it better? Absolutely. Do I think that they were fundamentally concerned about the overrunning of hospitals and having caskets out somewhere with bodies in them being buried like they were in New York or parts of Italy? And that's why they took some of the decisions they did. I agree. But it gave me comfort that the relative heads of medicine or the chief medical officers in each state and territory were front and center.
Well, for the first few months of COVID, I will defend every decision maker, right? Because no one in our lifetime, the information you had was changing by the hour. You'd never seen it before. So I'll defend everyone to a certain level. Excuse me. The issue I have is that we were told 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And that became, in some places, nearly 2 years. So, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that morphed from what you said, which was the medical advice, and then it became political. So that, and this gets to the point of undermining that trust, right? Because everyone was told just 2 weeks. Then we're told masks don't work, and masks do work. And I can tell you masks don't work because I showed someone the amount of hair in my mask, and they were just shocked, blown away. I said, so if that's getting in, what do you think is happening for particles you don't see? But anyway, the flip-flopping on the advice was a problem. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That went out the window. Mask, don't mask, that went out the window. We now know the 6 foot thing was just made up. It was an arbitrary number.
Because I'd like to re-implement that policy here, Dave.
The masking?
No, the 6 foot.
Oh, the 6
you
foot.
and I were not within 6 feet.
We're about 3.5 at the moment. We need another 2.5 feet.
Can we get a glass lens in here, please?
The old Sizzler spray guard type stuff. Then the issue also became something like COVID is that governments weren't taking a nuanced approach to it either, because I read a really good piece that said, and this was about 9 months into COVID, said, does the US have a COVID problem or an obesity problem? Because what it had started to show at that point...
Fat shaming people, Dave.
Fat shaming.
We're breaking new ground.
Yeah, you fat Americans. Apparently Australia's not far behind. I think we're the second fattest. So was it the comedian Will Anderson? He said, Aussie, 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 oi, 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 should be Aussie, 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 oink, oink, oink. So, but what it was is that one of the biggest issues around COVID was morbidity, so pre-existing conditions, so heart conditions, or if you're carrying too much weight, so all these sorts of things. And that's why in different parts of the world we saw different numbers and data. It wasn't one consistent through line. But again, they didn't talk about these things, right? They took this blanket approach, and even though again they knew kids were at low risk, and so that sort of stuff is where people, they undermined the trust by things were so inconsistent at a point, because remember the first 3 to 6 months, I'll say, moving information. But then it got to the stage where you're seeing jurisdictions where people are out living, and then you've got other jurisdictions like Victoria that's still just in lockdown, and there was no justification. You couldn't make that argument. You couldn't say, well, hang on, people in this state are going out and living now. We're not seeing this massive death toll, but you can still keep your people locked down. So I think it morphed from medical advice to political show pony.
Yeah. But the issue there, Dave, is it showed how completely neutered the federal government was.
Oh, yeah. That's when people start to realise Australia is a federation and what it means, and that states can control their borders and do different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they assume we were just all one, and suddenly, someone from New South Wales couldn't just fly into Western Australia. It was you realise we're sort of 6 different countries, and well, the states, the territories as well. But yeah,
so here's where I think distrust in government as opposed to some of the public institutions that are funded by government. But here's where it kind of comes to the surface for me. I want an honest answer. I want an honest answer around COVID, and I want to be able to write to my member of parliament and say, dear member, I'd like to know the incidence of either cardiac issues or cardiac-linked stroke issues in men over 40 pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah, because I can tell you the insurance industry that actually their actuaries have to work these numbers out. They're seeing excess deaths,
and I just want to know what it is.
Charts.
Yeah, and so at least get the facts out there, right?
Correct.
Because at the moment, so when you don't do that, what it does for me is because of my little health dramas, and I'm not saying it was related to COVID, but in my mind I'm thinking, anyway, that does build. Or it does breed distrust, right? And then the next time, if we have to live through something like that again, and someone's telling me get a vaccine, I'll be going, no thanks. Now, if that means I have to sit in my apartment and work from there and not leave it and get Uber Eats and get groceries delivered and stay there for 3 months, I'll do it. I don't care. I really don't.
Well, as everyone see, I still have a cough. I've had this cough for 2 years. It just hangs around. So I want to know, is this long COVID?
It's not long COVID. It's lodge COVID.
It could be lodge COVID. Lodge 2025. Do you remember sitting on your lounge having a very romantic night? I think it was candlelight. I think you're wearing your negligee.
Strangers in the night.
Yeah. But we're having the conversation over whether or not to get vaxxed. And I said I wasn't going to. I end up getting vaxxed because the Mauritian Queen was sort of forced in with her job, which became another thing, right? Mm. You get vaxxed or you lose your job. So I did that with her. And then the government tried to move away. Go, oh, no. We didn't tell companies that they had that right. You could lose a job. And the company go, hang on, you're putting pressure on us, telling us that. So that was another thing that lost trust.
Yeah.
Which was, let's play the game and pretend that we can put the pressure and your company has a right to tell you to take this vaccine. But anyway, back to you and your negligee that night. We're having the conversation, and you said to me, why are you hesitant? And I said, no one can show me 10 years worth of trials in 6 months. I said, we've got to the point that we've put Big Pharma in an arms race with each other for a product that's basically going to be 100% of the globe. They're fighting for market share, and we've just indemnified them from any side effects. Seriously?
Where's the moral hazard? Didn't we speak about this the other week?
Well, if people want to
talk about privatizing profits, socializing losses, like losses,
that was a big thing,
like the death count,
100%. And you look at things like thalidomide, and if people don't know what thalidomide is, it was a morning sickness drug that was given to women back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it was causing birth defects. And the company that was making it knew of this, but the profits were so good they hid it. And to this day, if you jump on the Australian government website, just do Australian government thalidomide, we're still making payments to people that were impacted by thalidomide. And what did these birth defects were effectively like short arms and things like that on people. So it's, if you think that people out there won't let people die for $1 trillion, of course they will.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that's why that night, that conversation, I'm like, I don't know what they're going to do. And this is one way I'm going to criticize you here. I remember you saying, because this is where you're a little bit, so you have more trust than me.
Yeah.
I'm more a cynical prick. You're the nicer.
Probably an asshole.
Yeah. You're a nice asshole. I'm a cynical prick. And this is where you said, oh, no, but what they're doing is they're expediting things to replicate that 10 years. I'm like, you can't replicate time.
I can.
You can't replicate.
I can.
So
I wake up in the morning and piss excellence.
So I think you had a little bit more faith. You're a little bit more the glass is half full.
Yeah, and I think I learned through that experience to just be a little bit more questioning. Because I was
so you're part of the LGBTQ.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Question.
So, Dave, we talk about trust in public institutions. We talk about trust in government, this trust deficit. Why is trust important in democracy?
Well, it's the foundation that lubricates the transactions of society.
Now we're talking
lubrication term.
I feel like we need to get
boom.
We need to get nude for this part of the podcast.
When our producer Tom, can he give us some nice music? But that's what it does. It lubricates the transactions of society, right? So, if you start to lose trust, are you going to have someone come around and do some repairs on your house? Are you going to sit there watching him all the time? Or do you have faith in it? You go, trust you can send your kids off to school and they go educate rather than indoctrinate your kids? Are you going to have faith in your GP that he's attempting to give you the right medical advice? He's not just interested in making profits through kickbacks on whatever he prescribes. Do you have faith in your elections? Because you trust that your vote does count and that everything's above board. So, these things are far more important than what people realize. And some of the things that have gone on that we've laid out and many, many more, this has led us to this point. In fact, this is part of that bifurcation of society, that instead of people having that conversation around which policy takes us forward on energy, which policy takes us forward on migration, which policy takes us forward on foreign affairs, this is why that centrifugal politics that's driving people to the extremes, right? And this is why it doesn't matter who you talk to. I find that most people I'll talk to that are interested in politics, I could say something and I'll automatically see their position, the way they'll start to set up their answer. Yeah. And that to me gets back to what I said in the previous episode, which is that, you don't want to be rusted on one side, because it stops you from being critical enough of what's going on to make the change, to send the message to people in politics to stop taking us for granted.
Yeah, but the polarization of politics, and especially in the US where they're almost forced to pick sides, right? That lends itself, right, to a divisive person who can play the game to create narratives where the conspiracy theorists thrive and then democracy breaks down, right? Because, no, I don't trust the Federal Reserve. I don't trust Jerome Powell. I'd rather trust a bloke who's bankrupted more businesses than I've probably worked for, right, to deliver the economy and deliver, great outcomes for everyone. When you start undermining that and you undermine democracy, you are supporting a team. There's lots of things that happen in the US where people it's blind faith. Nothing more.
And that's the danger.
And that's the real danger. But I think it lends itself to that. If you can't agree on a certain set of facts.
But Jay Powell's not helping himself either. Because things, he won't cut rates for political reasons.
Oh.
So they're, both sides there are a mess. But to me, and it's the same thing like Janet Yellen, when she was in charge, our inflation's transitionary. Okay, no, it wasn't. So, there's been people there that have got to and this probably gets to the appointment issue of these people, is because they're political appointments, are you getting the best people? So, I mean, to me, the US is a big mess all around, because what I'd love to see, and not just in the US, but anywhere, I'd like to see it get back to, Democrat, Labor, Tory, they lay out a policy and they say, here's what our energy policy is going to be. And the other side doesn't just turn around and go, oh, you're all idiots, you don't know what you're doing, forget that, we'll just go do something altogether. Why can't you say, we think that these parts of the policies they've laid out are very good. We agree. We would implement them too. However, here's what they're getting wrong. and here's why you'd vote for us,
But that
because they're missing these pieces. But that doesn't happen.
Because that goes to polarization.
100%, because no one can turn around and say the other side's got some good ideas.
I just, like, Jerome Powell gets hammered, right, for not dropping rates. Like, it's not Jerome Powell in isolation, right?
Correct.
Hang on.
I say J Powell, but yeah.
Let me walk that back.
The Fed in general.
Let's use an RBA example, right? So there's an RBA board that actually run the organisation, right, and are responsible for the governance of the organisation. Then I understand they created a second board which focuses explicitly on the cash rate, right? I would like to think, in my own naive, trusting way, that all the data that they need to make an informed call is at their disposal almost instantaneously once the numbers land, right?
I'd like to think so.
I'd also like to think that the data that's provided to them via ABS and other business surveys and whatever, however they calculate CPI and everything else, and the what do they call it?
Trim mean.
The trim mean and the headline CPI number, all of that is robust, can be trusted, and can be used as a basis for decision making, right? So then the only variable for me in terms of the timing around which they make these decisions is the level of conservatism in their risk taking. Yeah.
To me, the RBA is a good example for me of one of the institutions I think the trust has been undermined. There's been two really big things for me. The first is going back to our previous governor, Philip Lowe, that in COVID, he turned around and effectively said interest rates are not moving for the next 3 years, right?
Survey says.
So what happened? He enticed, and again, this is not me absolving personal responsibility from what you borrow and your ability to facilitate that debt in the current interest rate environment and higher. However, you and I both know the average person probably couldn't even, explain macroeconomic policy or monetary policy or fiscal policy at the most basic level.
I can spell macroeconomics.
Well, you're off to a good start.
Is there a silent J in there somewhere?
It's a soft J.
Soft
it's like
yogging.
Yeah, you're on it. So he turned around and he effectively enticed a whole bunch of people to load up on debt. And then what did we see in the next 3 years? Not stability in the rates. We saw 350, 385 basis points of movement. Huge, massive, right? So that in and of itself really undermined the credibility of the Reserve Bank in the eyes of the average person, who probably before that time didn't even really know.
Yeah, right. Oh, they probably didn't. They had no need to care because rates were at 1%.
Correct.
0.5%, right?
Around the world, they were either zero bound or near zero.
And so his mistake there was opening his mouth.
Correct.
We will assess the data in 3 months' time as per our normal cycle. Why even start talking about 2024?
Correct.
The moment, he might have been wanting to give a sign of confidence because during COVID he was worried that the arse was going to fall out of the economy the other way. Let's give people some certainty. You go and commit to 3 years of stability in interest rates. You're right. Like now, I look at the RBA and I think they've gone the other way.
Correct. So
so that's what I'm saying, Dave. There must be a conservative bias in their risk taking where they need, instead of having 70% probability or confidence of an outcome that allows them to make a decision, they're probably asking for 90. I just can't understand why they've kept them this high for this long.
Well, to me, I still even think that's wrong because I reckon if you went out and you randomly took, 8 small business owners that have been in business for a minimum of 10 years, and then one governor of a reserve bank, you get better monetary policy, right? Because those people they don't need data. They don't need the data to tell you. All that data can be misrepresent, right? So things like the employment rate, if you've worked an hour, you're employed. So it doesn't really factor in the underemployment. Well, they turn around and they'll say GDP, but if I've got to work 70 hours a week now just to break even because I'm underwater, oh, look at that. Look at the number of hours that are being worked. Look at the I'm nearly underwater. It's not good. So I don't think they can read data anyway. But even still, the replacement for Philip Lowe, another mistake, where they said we want a first female governor of the RBA. Why? And I don't mean women can't do it. I mean, why don't you just happen to look for the best person for the position at the time? And if she's female, so be it.
Yeah, but right? Dave, I actually believe she may very well be the best person. All I'm saying is...
she's not, because she proved it within the first month or two, because she came out when everyone knew inflation was due to supply chain issues and all sorts. And you know what she says? and this is on record, this is not misinterpretation, it's due to hairdressers and dentists. So clearly she'd had her hair done, the teeth done that week, and this is the head of the RBA.
What about barbers?
That everyone else, no, barbers are too cheap. So the head of the RBA says that. What sort of a clown did we put in charge for the RBA?
But Dave, again, this is not her making the decision in isolation.
No, I know she doesn't make the decision.
Reason
What I'm
the
saying,
board of governors, right?
but this is where the trust has gone.
I know, but collectively they should have the intellect and the ability to interpret data that's based on fact to come up with an outcome, and it leads into a decision. So I actually believe their process is fine, but it's got to be the risk profile of these people, that they are ultra conservative and they want everything squared away before they make a decision on rates. And I actually don't think, given the experience with Philip Lowe and now the current experience, which has gone the other way, you think they need to change their risk settings in terms of how they make decisions.
Well, to me, it raises the question: do we have the best people on the board, or did you turn around and it's all DEI? Because you know what I mean, and it might not be, but we're talking about trust, right?
Yeah.
So what you've done is you've taken me up until, and I know more than most because I follow it more than most because I'm a freaking nerd. I know who Philip Lowe is. I know who Michelle Bullock is, but you've got me now questioning because of the stupidity of Philip Lowe's comment, and I'll go with it. I don't think it was stupid because it was unknown. It was stupid to make a comment that far out in the unknown. But she proved her stupidity when even the average bricklayer in Western Sydney knew supply chain issues are driving up the cost of things. He understood what inflation was. And you just say it's hairdressers and dentists that are reporting nothing. So for me, what that does is the stupidity of that comment from someone that's meant to be a leading expert in monetary policy means I now question the entire board, right? And they could all be brilliant.
Yep.
But that's the erosion of that trust because you turned around and you made a public statement you want a first female. And then she said something so illiterate and stupid as to what inflation was that even other economists just ripped her apart, which means my trust is now, right, is she meant to be the secretary? But you've made it, look, I don't know. Because did you interview, if you were going to go down that path of the first female, did you interview 10 brilliant economists? I don't know. So it raises those questions. I could be wrong, but you've put the doubt in my mind by the decision you've made and the things you've said that should never have happened. Because what you should have said is Philip Lowe's retiring and we need someone that's a steady hand, that's highly experienced, that's going to understand monetary policy and the two prongs of the mandate being inflation and employment.
But I'd go a step further,
do
Dave.
that.
I'd go a step further. I think Philip Lowe, or the last few Reserve Bank governors, I forget how far back we're talking, they've been given a public platform. I don't want to hear from them. Have your meeting, release your statement, and move on. Now they're asked to justify. They're independent. They've made their decision based on fact. I don't believe they need to be put in front of the media to justify their decision to talk through the considerations of the RBA board when they're trying to land the cash rate. No, like does the CBA at their annual general meeting talk about the discussions that were had at board level around a certain strategic investment or issue or dividend ratio? No, they say, here's what we've done, here's where we're going. They don't talk about the factors that came into their consideration. They might get asked about it. They don't necessarily have to give that information. You give them a platform, it opens them up for critique. And the more they say, the more likely they're going to get themselves into some type of stitch up. And that's what's happened with the past two governors.
Listen very carefully.
Yes.
You just made a really good point.
And similarly, like the head of the Australian Bureau of Stats, the head of the Electoral Commission, I don't know who they are. Well, I've got trust in what they do. Now, the RBA, because it's such a hot topic, and it lends itself to the economy, and then the media lathers over it because they got a gotcha moment, and you promised interest rates were going to come down, and look at the people struggling. So the media gets all lathered up about it, but let's not make these people rock stars. But do your job.
That's right. I was going to say, but that's the point I think you make, is not just limited to central banks, but are we starting to make public figures that should just be performing their duties, are we starting to turn them into rock stars? So we're making a mistake that people, know who J-Pal is, know who...
again, like the fact that I should know the name actually. Let's go there. If I ask 10 people who
Who's
the
that have the RBA?
yeah, how many would know, you reckon? 2?
Yeah, and they're both in this room.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, I don't necessarily need to know them. I just need confidence in their process, that they are taking everything into consideration and they are the best and the brightest. I don't care if they're black, blue, male, female, or any type of other thing on the spectrum. I don't care. As long as they're the best
They're
people
competent.
to do that job, right? And they're consistently applying their process to deliver a decision every month. I don't care who they are, and I don't need to hear from them.
Well, I think we're seeing it across the board, right? Because you look at universities and you look at the way vice chancellors are starting to, be on social media. And like, for example, I see a lot of stuff from the vice chancellor of Western Sydney University on my LinkedIn feed. And it's kind of, I feel there's an element there of, is he starting to want to be a public figure? And that, so it's one of those things that maybe it's part of our problem in today's world, that we think everyone that gets to a certain level, we want them to, that term personal brand, someone's personal brand. So if using Michelle Bullock or a vice chancellor like Williams at Western Sydney, are they doing things because they want to make sure their personal brand is at a level for their next gig?
Yeah.
Instead of just being competent.
But
is that our fault? Because we want superstars.
Yeah. So we've spoken about, public institutions. The media is the same. So the media is the fourth pillar, right? Holding the politicians to account. But increasingly, and we've spoken about this on multiple occasions, they feel like they're part of the story.
Yes.
Right? They're activists, right? They feel like they're contributing. They feel like they're in this constant mode of trying to catch out politicians. Oh, the optics of that is not good. What about the politics of that for Labor? Like, forget it. Report on the story. That's the policy. Here are the people who are going to be impacted. The feedback that we've had off the street is X, Y, and Z. No one does that. It's just cheap, lazy stuff, and they feel like they're part of the story. Like, the mainstream media, I've almost disengaged with now.
I have a long time ago.
Yeah.
I actually, there's a few, like when I said I read Zero Hedge, for example, is one of my staples.
I read Zero Lodge.
Zero Lodge, you're wasting your time, you're killing your brain cells. But when I read Zero Hedge, if you ask me to name, some of the people that write a lot of the articles, I could probably only name 3 or 4. And the reason being is 2 things. One is obviously Zero Hedge is open to anyone to write something, and if it's good, it'll get up there. But the stuff I read never comes across as the people are trying to make themselves the story.
Part of the story.
Yeah. What it is they're presenting whatever facts it is, whatever insight they have. And I think that's one of the big problems, right? There's too many people. Like you and I, when we even doing this, one of the conversations we had when I asked you when I was losing Gary because his son's chasing his golf scholarship, one of the things I said to you is that I don't want to be famous, right? So I said, you and I don't do this because we're trying to get big and we'll make money and we'll be rich. We just think...
Really?
So I misunderstood. But the reality is we felt that there was a lack of people from different sides of the aisle, which you and I agree on a lot, but let's, for argument's sake, different sides of politics, and showing you can have a conversation and still be close friends, big deal.
Oh.
You can agree to disagree. You could prove me wrong. I could prove you wrong. I can learn something from you. So we didn't start this with the concept of, here's the brand, here's what we'll do. 2 years from now time, we won't be able to walk down Sydney without someone asking for a photo. Like that's just never been part of why we're doing it. So for me, I see a lot of people in different institutions that appear to me that they are doing it for their personal brand. They are doing it to say, look who I am, look what I've achieved, look at the title I have. And I feel that getting back to my point that I ad nauseum argue about, we don't have leaders. Like I had in my last job, the guy that was the director, he thought what made a good leader is he'd turn up in a bloody double-breasted suit and his little company pin, and he thought you had to look a certain way, do things. He knew nothing. He was disorganized. He was erratic. He really couldn't run anything. But it was all this perception like a personal brand. I actually even remember him once coming back from an international trip with some very big wigs in the company. And someone pulled him aside and actually told him, stop trying to stand out. You don't want to stand out.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Don't wear the double-breasted. Don't do this. Don't make. And it's like trying to tell you, you're going to make a target of yourself, that what you're trying to do is you're trying to get somewhere. You're not trying to do a good job and then you'll get somewhere. And for me, he's the sort of person that I see like everywhere today, is that personal brand. And I think that's part of the erosion of the trust, because the head of the RBA, the head of the Fed, the vice chancellor, all these people are trying to make sure that when they're in front of the cameras, that everything comes across about how amazing they are, instead of just focusing on doing the job. And then if you are amazing, we'll talk about how amazing you were, how amazing your leadership was.
Yeah, I get it. Dave, we've spoken about fake news. What about misinformation in campaigns? Like, I remember hearing 46 different versions of what The Voice was actually going to do. What The Voice in Australia actually was going to do in terms, like, I heard it was going to impact interest rates, Dave. A senator from the coalition side told me that.
Of course it was going to impact interest rates.
Right? And for me, because the media doesn't question, and that's only one small example, there are other examples as well, but truth in campaign or campaigning is not questioned. So now Donnie can come up with some pretty extravagant promises and comments, yeah? Donnie?
No, he's straight down the line, Tone.
So I think
everything's all just truth. There's no bluster.
So I think he embellishes quite a lot, but because there's so much misinformation out there, he could literally call anything a lie or fake news, and people go, "That's wrong."
I think the thing with Trump, he's probably the embodiment, the perfect embodiment of what I just said about personal brand, right? And I'm on the Trump train.
True.
But that would be my criticism, is it's the Trump show. And I've said it before about when he talks about, I'll be the best president, the greatest president this country's ever seen. You may well turn out that way, but that's for others to judge.
No.
Right? And what does, well, to be honest, I think he's a force of nature and he's a one-off. I don't think he's setting the standard, and what we're going to see is an emulation of the Trumpian style, because some people can do it and get away with it, and he can.
Yep.
And others, it doesn't matter how you try. If you're not authentic, it's not going to work. But that's the thing I'm looking for. What I want to start seeing is I want authenticity in our leaders. And authenticity can be, I can completely disagree with someone, but if I think they're authentic and they're genuinely trying to do the best, then I'm all for it. But I don't see that. I don't see that on the inside.
But with Donnie, I've got no doubt he's genuinely trying to do the best.
He's trying to do the best for. I do believe he's trying to do the best for America.
No, but
I don't think he can put his personality aside.
I think he's trying. Like, there's a level of self-interest there as well, right?
For sure.
But see, guys like Trump, potentially Farage in the UK, they weaponize that doubt, right? They create doubt. Don't trust them. They're the legacy media. Don't trust the far left. Don't trust the Dems. They're bad people, and they weaponize that doubt to gather numbers, gather followers, right? And then they want to see themselves, or especially Donnie with his ego, he wants to be seen as the only person that everyone in the US can trust. You can't trust anyone else, right? That level of propaganda reminds me of,
Goebbels.
Good old Joe back in the day.
Well, the thing
do you agree there's a level of propaganda? No,
there's a level there.
No, I'll walk it back. What I mean is, do you believe that Donnie sees himself as the savior?
Oh, without doubt.
He's the only one,
100%,
correct?
100%.
And if that means he has to throw half his current followers under the bus, he will do that.
I actually do agree with that.
His belief in himself is unparalleled.
His belief, well, definitely. But here's the thing I'd say. He's backed it up.
To some extent.
Oh, listen, for what he was facing in two-time president, he's backed it up. I'm not talking about backed it up in terms of the economy is perfect. What I mean is he's backed it up in the sense of he's got where he wants to be.
Oh, no, seriously. No, if you're going to assess him and judge him on his ability to get reelected and to create a narrative and to create a movement that believes that gets a whole lot of people believing that he's for them, absolutely, he's won. Right? But what I'm saying is, and I've said this from the start, his ability to actually implement meaningful outcomes for those people he said he defended at the lower end of the scale, right? And to rebuild middle-class America, his ability to do that will be based on outcomes. And at the moment, I'm not seeing it, but it's only 6 months. I'll wait another 18 months and see where he's at.
Because for me, one of the things that I think about with it, that belief that he is the only one that could do it is actually not really demonstrable through himself, right? I think it's deep in that, because I think it's like, not I'm the only one that can do it because I'm the only one that can place the right pieces that this will echo after I'm gone. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, JD Vance will move forward and Marco Rubio and all. So for me,
I'm hearing Marco's got the inside running there.
Well, he could do, because I saw Trump answer a question where someone said, "Will JD be the next one up?" And he'll be a very good president, but we'll wait and see. He's very young. There's a lot of time, which sort of suggests that there's other people in the pipeline. But that to me is where, if someone said to me, "What's the argument that Trump is the only one?" It's actually not him doing it. It's that this particular lineage and what I'm picking and who's going to move forward after I can't, run a third term.
But that belief leads to, in his mind, he's never lost, right? But the facts kind of add up. Like, he's had some questionable business investments here. Well, let's leave Epstein aside, because those files must have magically disappeared.
You don't want some Trump stakes.
And I see that Ghislaine's got a nice new low-level, low-security prison in Texas. It'll be a matter of time before she gets pardoned magically. But anyway, we digress.
Her father was a Mossad.
Robert Maxwell.
Agent, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. He also owned Tottenham. Probably explains why they're shit.
Yeah.
But I think, Dave, if you park all that aside, when you look back at Trump in the 2020 election, right, where he said in reality he won by a landslide, right? He won by a landslide, but Dave, there was 60. That's right. I said 60 court decisions which confirmed and reaffirmed that result. So what we're basically saying is that all of those can't be trusted, and that goes to further undermining.
But here's where the issue of the erosion of trust comes about.
Because he said he won by a landslide.
But it's not just him, right? So, because let's run with it. The Trump says he wins in 2020, not in dispute, right? What Hillary say?
We won by a landslide.
Yeah, it's not in dispute. What did Hillary say in 2016?
I don't know. What did you say?
I won it. It was stolen by Russians, right? So now the point I'm making here is not defense of Trump. We're speaking to the undermining of trust.
Yeah, fair enough.
So this predates Trump, right?
Yep.
So you've got both sides, when they lose, claim the other side stole it.
Yep.
Right? So this is part of the problem. And then the other thing that happens...
I don't want to split hairs here, but Hillary's blaming the Russians, right? This bloke...
is blaming Hillary.
No, 60 court decisions said... Right, and he would still say to this day, I won by a landslide.
Well, there's a couple of things that come out that even the Democrats themselves are asking where the 15 million votes disappeared to that appeared for Biden in 2020 and then weren't there for her.
I'm not going to buy into that.
But
I actually think Biden won the 2020 election.
Let's leave that
And
aside.
I think Trump won 2016, and I think Trump won 2024.
Yep, I'm happy to run with that because for me, the focus is on the lack of trust. So for me, again, the lack of trust, why do you have 5 states stop counting in the middle of the night and then, start again? Now, there might have been some legitimate reasons, but they all happen to be swing states. So if you want to rebuild trust, 2 things. You want voter ID laws. So you want them. Don't try and say that you need a license to drive a car, but you don't need a license to vote. And then on top of that, make it all votes are going to be counted within a certain period of time. Not this 2 weeks later, not this. Don't even leave it open. Don't even let some conspiracy theorist see a white truck pull up that's unrelated, but go, oh, look, they're dropping stuff off, right? Don't do it. So they need to clean things up. And again, this is both sides of the aisle. If you lose an election, you lose the election.
That's right. Because why?
And
we've got trust in democracy.
And even if you have suspicions, don't come out and publicly say it. Go away and do your own stuff. And when you've got solid evidence, lay your solid evidence on the table, right? There's got to be some time that the adults in the room, no matter how suspicious you are of something, if you don't have the proof, you've got to say, what damage is this going to do to the fabric of American society? If I say the Russians stole this from me in 2016, and then I say I won the landslide in 2020, right? It does rip at the fabric of. So and again,
like America is an extreme example, okay?
It is.
But I want to touch on, as we kind of finish up, I want to talk about, and we touched on this in an earlier podcast, the firing of the head of the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Her name was Erica McIntyre. Got sacked after releasing some numbers and revising some other numbers. And I got a quote here, basically saying that Trump's decision didn't just remove one person, it sent a chilling message. If you don't like the numbers, you can fire the statistician. That shakes faith in that shakes faith in even the most apolitical agencies. Because it undermines, I don't like the result. It's like,
well, the optics are not good.
The budget office sent something through, nah. Jerome Powell, gone. Someone else sent something through, gone. Like, it's just a slippery slope, and it's perception, right?
100%.
And I think, I just wish.
And to me, it's give her enough rope to hang herself. Like, if it's true,
lay it out.
Just put the numbers and go, she's been in the job for 16 months. Every single month we've had to revise. Under the Biden administration, you can see there's been a revision of jobs upwards 1 million. Yeah, like lay it out there and let everyone go, shit, Trump could sack her because she's incompetent, but he hasn't. I thought, to me, that was a big misstep.
So I think because we've spent a bit of time on Donnie,
and it does undermine.
But I've always said, if he just could have won the election, right, which he did, and then his ego, park it, right, and then let some others drive the administration and their agenda, right, without all the, flabbergasting and big noting himself, without all of that, the Republicans would literally govern for the next 20 years, Dave, and they still might, right?
Well, I think they will, but I think you're correct.
Right? Just park there. But his inability to do that, and his inability not to accept defeat, right? And there's so many rumors about the Epstein files and what may or may not be going on, but what it does is he seems to be the thing that's kind of kicked off this whole mistrust and distrust in public institutions and government. It was probably already simmering underneath.
I don't think he's kicked it off, but he's probably kicked off distrust in his administration that probably wasn't there even for the Republicans.
But he's brought it to the boil, right?
Because he should have, the Epstein stuff should have just been released because he was talking about that when he wasn't in office.
And he's got a lot of backlash on that, hasn't he?
Yeah, you'd even get from someone like me that were voted for him. I'm like, well, you can't have someone in prison for soliciting and arranging things if there's no clients that she's doing it for. So what's the evidence that she was convicted on? What are the names? Drop them. I want to know. So for me, I think that's been a big misstep from him.
Yep.
Here's my criticism the first 6 months that I would suggest are undermining the trust in him to stay the course on being I'll do what I say. Obviously, I laid out in another episode, I think he screwed Ukraine by not just sticking with no weapons.
Yep.
No weapons for you. And just forcing Zelensky to the table. I think the Epstein is a big misstep by not just going, yep, we're just going to release it. Because he's got nothing to worry about. The Democrats, for everything, all the lawfare, you think they weren't going to use, Epstein. And then, of course, the last one is firing the woman from the BLS, where all he had to do was lay out her work and let it speak for itself.
So I think, Dave, we absolutely agree. The trust deficit exists. Right? There's been politicalization of the media, polarization of political parties, and now it's seen as a weapon in order to gather numbers and gather support. Less so in Australia, thankfully. I still think there is a level of trust, even though the RBA's copped the hammering for good reason.
There are, but there's other things aside from the RBA. Because, in our last episode, I spoke about that Australia said it didn't want the voice. It didn't want the Indigenous population to be treated differently from us. We're all one, and yet governments are still just doing it. Like that erodes trust because, as I say, we're not talking about something you ran on it and then you won an election and 49% to 51 and the 49% are upset and you're going to say you lost.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, this was a loss. Yet they're still just going, no. You know what? It's what we believe in. What we got that underpins.
yeah, but the Feds haven't done anything on The
So-
Voice. What are they doing? Give me one tangible, credible source that tells me that the Australian government, current government, is moving on anything to do with
Yeah,
The
but
Voice.
that's also
No, Dave, I want something credible.
I'm about to give it to
Go
you,
on.
but that's also being disingenuous because that's saying that we're not doing it at the federal level, but these Labor governments at the state level, they're doing their own treaties, they're doing their own voice. That's just backdooring it.
No,
That's disingenuous.